So we got some chickens. This lady here has rescued a bunch of chickens from a place that did mass production. So they're not the most ideal chickens, but she rescued them here, and we forgot to turn the camera on. We were chasing them all around the barnyard. We got a dozen of them. They're a present for me for my birthday, and they have a bunch of guineas here too. So it was the first time I got to see the guineas, and they all just left. But anyway, really good situation. We're getting them put in the truck right now and giving them air. Did it work?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Austin.
You're welcome. Wow, great birthday present. I'm going to put them both in here at the same time before we undo it.
Okay, that's such a good idea.
We probably ought to
get some water.
I did the same thing.
You know what? It's not as tall as we're used.
Come on out, come on out. We're going to do it from out here.
How are we going to do it from out here?
Like this.
Wow, that hurt. Freeing themselves. They're not like little babies where you have to introduce them, you know? A dozen chicks. Not perfection, but we have a dozen chicks. So thank you to one of our viewers, I don't remember your name right now, that talked to us about how she had lost a bunch of chickens with chicken wire. Even though we had, even though we had 1-inch chicken wire up here and hardware wire down here, we've now put welded wire across, and it's tripled actually right in parts of it.
Well, what that does is the welded wire keeps the raccoons and other strong animals from tearing into it, but the 1-inch chicken wire keeps snakes that are large enough to find their way in out.
Birds out.
Birds.
And we're going to make it a little more shady for them. They're really hot right now. So let me just tell you where we got these. These were our red sexed chickens. They're sex links. They're 15 months old. They are never never would be our choice to just go out and buy them like this, but they were a gift and we got them for really inexpensive. And we're very, very happy to have them.
Well, they're rescue chickens.
These are rescue chickens. They're rescued from a production place.
Egg production facility.
And this person rescues them and then goes and sells them to farms that can have them and take care of them. So it's really a nice situation. They'll be perfect work ones for us as soon as they realize that they can peck. They have been on free ranging for as long as they've been at the house. So we'll get them to learn how to work.
The house where we got them.
The house where we got them.
We pour it off.
Now we're gonna get a white tarp when we can. We had our white tarp in Oregon and we sold those with the chicken tractors that we sold. The answer to Missouri heat. Woo! They're so much happier now.
Exactly. Okay, we need to get working things to put that on, and that'll get that held down.
Well, I'm also going to review a couple of things. Now, you'll recall that the cell, that once we eat, do you remember when Jim had the esophagus and all of that here? And once we eat and the food goes in, then the pancreas sends out the signal for the insulin, and this key is going to represent the insulin. And the insulin goes to the cell and opens the cell and unlocks and lets the sugar go in. That is a normal process. So if you eat normally, then the pancreas stops giving insulin, the sugar goes into the cells like it's supposed to, and everything goes back to the way it normally is. We exercise, we use up the fat that's in the cells, and it's normal. So if you have more sugar, then you have more insulin, which is bigger, see, bigger, to open up the cell to let it in. Now, insulin is really a fat storing hormone. Without insulin, we don't store fat. But if we just keep putting in the carbohydrates and the processed food and all of the things that we put in with those carbohydrates, and we just keep releasing insulin, then our insulin gets to be a lot more, and our cells grow a lot more. So if you're trying to get in with the insulin, and you work at it and work at it and work at it, and the cell won't let you in because the cell is full and it does not want anything else in there. So let me reiterate, the muscle cell doesn't want anything else in there, so the insulin is going to put it into the fat cell. It's going to keep doing the triglycerides and the cholesterol, and the fat cell gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It really has no threshold. It's just going to get big. Well, enter on the scene a new protein. This little guy, he announces he's a protein on the fat cell. And he tells the hypothalamus, way up here in the top of our head, hey, I have enough to eat, I am not hungry, you don't need to store anymore. So it turns off, the insulin can go away, and I'm gonna do this. Down behind in the back, in the spine, if he turned around on the back, where our nervous system goes down, there's a vagus nerve. The vagus nerve and the hypothalamus, vagus nerve, hypothalamus, communicate back and forth. And the vagus nerve, this talks to it, the brain, and the brain says to the vagus nerve, okay, they're full, they don't need any more. Well, what happens is this. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Dr. Robert Lustig, remember, he's a an endocrinologist, and he works with children. And he has these children who develop brain tumors. And when they get cured from their brain tumor and all of the chemicals and the chemotherapy and everything that's happened to them, what they're finding is it kills the cells in their brain that allow the leptin to respond to it. So the leptin goes there and it just, nothing happens. It doesn't respond. I'm going to take you back for a moment. Insulin, when our bodies do not have insulin at all, that's called type 1 diabetes, type 1. When we don't have any leptin, there's not a name for it except that we are leptin deficient. But what happens when we are leptin resistant? Meaning we have the leptin, but we are overpowered by the amount of insulin, so the leptin can knock and knock and knock on the hypothalamus and nothing happens. And that's what happened to these children. So these children were cured from their cancer, but they got fatter and fatter and fatter, and they were starving all the time. And so they would eat, but they didn't want to move, because that's what the vagus nerves tells them to do. Don't move, don't exercise, don't do anything, just sit. And an experiment was done with mice. And I'm showing you a picture of 2 mice right now. And they injected this little mouse by taking out all of the leptin, the way they did it. They made it that way, so it did not have leptin. And it just ate and ate and ate and ate and ate. And the only way that it would go movement whatsoever was if food was put across the cage, and then it would waddle over and eat that food. Well, then they gave it replacements of leptin, and they watched the activity levels just rise and come back up. And it started losing weight, it stopped eating. That is the discovery that has been made about why obesity is not your fault. Now, it has behaviors that we all are like, oh, but it's the behavior, oh, it's what we do. But what we're finding is, what Dr. Lustig has done several research studies on, is that it's the hormones of leptin and insulin that control the way that you eat and the way that you are active, and then as a result, you gain weight.
Well, it's not that you gain weight, it's this, that your cells are reacting to a condition, that they...
It's a condition. You have no way to unlock any good cells, and so your cells get fatter and fatter and fatter. The 2 things that he has us do, and one is alter our hormonal environment, and then alter our environment itself. And so we're going to go into those. There is some hope. It does take work, but please know that it doesn't matter if you are extremely obese or if you're thinner, like most people say that I am, or that Jim is. If we don't eat right, we still have the insulin meter around our belly. And we still do, because we don't always do it right. And that's where it goes.
Well, for example, 9 years ago, when we first started this, we were a lot more careful. We'll say it careful. We may be kind of extreme on what we did and did not eat. And we lost more weight. We lost this...
I had nothing. It was completely flat.
We lost this extra fat around our midsection. And now we've learned that we can get by with doing less effort. And so we eat things, maybe too much bread, that type of thing. And not really too much, but more than we should. That makes it too much.
Plus, we travel a lot back and forth to the city, and we have to eat out at different places that don't have what the choices
are tough. So as a result, we end up with more around our middle, and for us, it's a very rapid measurement. We know if we go for a period of time without eating those things, it goes away. We start eating it, it comes back
really
immediately.
fast.
We know
really
it.
fast.
So we've watched it come and go over the years as we've done better or done worse. What they're saying is true. It works that way, and we can see that if we persisted and didn't try to control it, it would get more and more until we got into the condition that they're talking about, that it's out of control. We don't want to move, we don't want to exercise, and we want to eat too much. Then it just multiplies.
And the depression, the depression that comes with the hormones. So this little guy, this little leptin, was only discovered in the 1990s, and they did research on it, and they're still doing research on it, but they can't do a drug that fixes it. They have not been able to. There's one drug that does. It's super expensive. It has to be done with injections, and they're only using on some of these cancer children.
And it has lots of side effects.
Lots of side effects. So it comes down to really a lifestyle change, but one that's going to be where you're altering your hormones that are causing this. So it is a way of hope. It's a huge way of hope.
Yes, yeah. There's an answer. There's a solution.
And the thing that was so wonderful to us is in this book, Fat Chance, and in Dr. Schwartzbein, where we follow both of them, the reason that we followed them, we didn't say this before, is because they eat real food. There's no fad diets. There's no vegan. There's no gluten. There's nothing like that. It's real food. That's what, and it's a balance of real food. So it's easier to follow. And that's why it's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change.
And it's also not eating the same things day after day. It's having a mixture.
A huge variety.
And during the course of the day, eating different things. So you don't have the same thing for breakfast day after day, the same thing for lunch. You mix it up.
We do encourage you to read this book. It's an amazing book. It's easier if you're a nurse. But because there's a lot of scientific stuff, and what I told about today was like gleaning over the top of it, but it will help you understand the scientific part behind it.
And with what has been learned and is being learned about leptin and what's associated with it, we know that there'll be other discoveries to help explain a lot of what we see when people are saying, but I diet and things don't change. Well, understanding more of how leptin plays into that and how our body and our hormones interact help us understand why some of these diets don't succeed. And as more is learned, the understanding will expand beyond that, and we can see even more clearly what kinds of things we have to do. But it all comes back to the same basic things. Eating the real food, eating it in correct portions, balancing it out,
and exercise.
That mixture is consistent, but the beauty of it is the way you feel, the way you act with other people, the way they interact with you, the way they see you, it's very different, and it's very helpful.
Oh, come on.